Deke, Cookie Jar, whatever nomenclature you go by now, fuck you. Fuck you in every conceivable fashion. In the face, in the ass, in the ear, in the spleen, and orifices that won't even be invented until 2050, with the Democratic Party's persistent need for imaginary disenfranchised groups necessitates the creation of the trans orificed minority subgroup. Fuck the fuck out of you for turning one of Nintendo's trademark franchises into a glorified gag show, for turning The Legend of Zelda's characters into rejected sitcom characters, for utilizing a franchise ripe for expansion and begging to be crafted into a sprawling epic series for nothing more than a fucking paycheck, for turning Link into a fucking meme. Fuck you in the throat with a barbed wire chainsaw, you leering, talentless dime store dye job in search of a company. The Legend of Zelda is a 1989 mistake, LARPing as an animated series that aired in 1989 on Fridays in place of the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. It takes place in the magical kingdom of Hyrule, where Mum-Ra's half-retarded second bifurcated cousin thrice removed from his mother's side, Ganon, is in possession of a mystical artifact called the Triforce of Power, and vain feminist fuckhead Princess Zelda is in possession of the Triforce of Wisdom. Whoever possesses both Triforces will gain complete rule over Hyrule. Knowing this, Ganon is constantly trying to steal Zelda's Triforce, while Zelda and her companion Link are constantly fighting off Ganon's forces. And that's literally it. If you thought there was going to be anything resembling deep character moment or world building or, I don't know, a fucking plot, you might as well park that bullshit fantasy right at the table somewhere between the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, and Joe Biden's claims of unifying the country. What passes for episodic plots in this series is to have Ganon concoct some harebrained scheme to steal the Triforce, prompting Link and Zelda to leap into action. And this is something that can be used in literally any show, and has. And don't give me that whole, well, they were only 2 games into the series, so they didn't really have much to work with, because that argument's about as empty as Biden's campaign promises. In the hands of a competent studio, like, say, pairing Rankin Bass with Pacific Animation Corporation, the same dynamic duo that gave us the terminally awesome Thundercats, this series could have been used as a building block to expand upon the Hyrulean mythology, develop actual personalities to its characters, and possibly give Nintendo material that they could have worked into later games. In the hands of Deke, a company notorious for producing poorly made licensed cartoons, actually creating something worthwhile? Don't make me laugh. To its credit, the series does make actual use of various characters and creatures, primarily moblins and stalfos, and weapons such as the bow and arrow, the boomerang, and the bombs from the games. It features various sound effects from the games, and the music you'll hear throughout the duration of the runtime does replicate various themes from the original game. I appreciate that Zelda is a more proactive character in the series. In all honesty, I think they were trying to make her the show's protagonist, and some of the action sequences are competently put together, if not animated a bit sluggishly. The show's animation was done by South Korean animation company Sejong. Most cartoons are animated overseas, and it honestly feels like they were rushed through. As a result, the animation during the action sequences feels like everybody's on a Thorazine bender. I've seen smoother action watching snails fuck. Each episode's plots aren't much better. In one episode, Ganon infiltrates a magician's contest and turns a lizard into a fire-breathing dragon. In another episode, he turns Link into a frog, because reasons. There's one where he steals a flying unicorn and kidnaps the king of Hyrule straight from his throne, and one where he uses an industrial magnet to pull the Hyrule castle down from the earth to steal, or down into the earth, to steal the Triforce of Wisdom. Why would magnets exist in this medieval fantasy world? Fuck all if I know. The best episode? Well, there really isn't one. I guess episode 8, Underground Connections, comes closest only because it's the closest one of these episodes comes to resembling the first game. The Triforce is blown into 3 pieces and scattered across different parts of Hyrule, so Link and Zelda have to venture down into the Hyrulean underground, which is apparently an endless labyrinth of staircases, Worst episode? Take your fucking pick. Although I have to give special attention to episode 3, The White Knight, wherein Zelda is wooed over by a pompous, self-absorbed caricature of Prince Charming, which prompts Link to attempt to win her over, ultimately embarrassing himself and the franchise in general. Tied with that would be episode 11, Fairies in the Spring, where construction on the King's Royal Water Park, yes, I said that correctly, is being held up because monsters or some shit. It's so out of place with the setting and all but loudly shrieks the words, "We swear to God the producers made us construct this episode." The worst thing about this show is that several of these episodes set up narratives that could be expanded upon in multi-episode story arcs. Instead, they're resolved at breakneck pace because, God forbid, we don't have each episode perfectly wrapped up in 15 minutes or fucking less. There is mention of other kingdoms in the world besides Hyrule, but it's a shame we don't get to see them fucking ever. It's never truly explained what the Triforce of Power does. The Triforce of Wisdom is just there to spout off magic 8-ball fortune cookie hints to the theaters that a palm reader would find gallingly vague, and nobody seems to know anything about the Triforce of Courage. And before you say there was no Triforce of Courage at the time, perhaps you should go back and replay Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. They established at the end of that game that there is a third Triforce. The Triforce of Courage existed before A Link to the Past, Mediocrity Defense Squad. Your argument is fucking invalid. The characters are a total mess. Zelda's character, voiced by Cynthia Preston, ranks somewhere between I can't believe it's not She-Ra and I can't believe she's not burning her bra and marching against a fictitious patriarchy. I'd call her bossy, but according to the SJWs, I'm not allowed to... You know what? Fuck it. She is bossy. Bossy incarnate. Link, voiced by Jonathan Potts, is a joke without a punchline. He's supposed to be the comic relief sidekick character and never comes across as funny, just whiny. He also spends a lot of time demanding Zelda kiss him for his heroic deeds. To quote Doug Walker, this guy's more horny than Pepe Le Pew. Ganon, voiced by Len Carlson, is about as threatening as a leaf. He wastes a lot of time rambling to himself and needlessly teleporting mid-sentence like a dark wizard version of Christopher Walken. Whenever Link and Zelda foil his attempts to steal the Triforce, it's not a genuine victory on their part. Every L he takes in the series is a textbook victory for gross incompetence and an embarrassment to Saturday morning cartoons. This guy makes Harry and Marv from Home Alone look like Talpa from Ronin Warriors. Link and Zelda have a very fairy friend, Sprite, voiced by Tabitha St. Germain, who is supposed to be help, like a third wheel for them, but is constantly hitting on Link for no reason. Why? He's so colossally unlikable. I can't possibly understand why anybody would flirt with him. The King of Hyrule, voiced by Colin Fox, is a complete dope. His eyes are constantly wide open, his voice is so derpy, and he looks like Santa Claus smoked a shitload of reefer. In short, every character in this show is more disposable than toilet paper. Every character has the personality of a shoehorn. Every character is a cardboard cutout. This series is bland, it's inventive, it was an outright chore for me to sit through. Even with only 2 games in this series, there was so much material to create something truly amazing, and instead, what we have is a wasted opportunity. Just stick with the games, the manga, and the re-released Link to the Past graphic novel. And if you want a good Zelda-like animated series, allow me to recommend the early 90s Arthurian legend cartoon, The Legend of Prince Valiant, or the early 90s anime Record of Lodoss War. Final verdict on The Legend of Zelda? Fuck this show!
Link, here come to town, come to save